Okay, so here we are, Walt Whitman, part three. Um, okay, so the question I left you with, if he's trying to do us some good, why is he being such a creeper? And I think there's an answer to that. Um, Basically, it's like this. Whitman seems to know that in order for us and our lives to go anywhere, to progress, and for us to become the best version of ourselves that we can possibly be, we must be unsettled. I'll say it again. We must be unsettled. So Whitman is deliberately trying to unsettle us. Um, Henry Thoreau has a famous line in his book Walden, and it goes like this: the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. I'll say it again. The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. Whitman, I think, was aware of this too, that we, we do our morning commute. We go down 42nd Street. We're going to jobs we can't stand. We feel stuck. We feel trapped. We feel unhappy, whatever it might be. So Whitman is trying to imagine, what is it going to take to breathe life into people so they feel like they can come alive. And so Whitman, is the great American poet, as he was envisioning himself, just needs to show up in our lives, sit down and look us right in the eyes and say, I see how beautiful you really are. I see your potential. I see the miracle that is your life. And I want you to realize that. I want you to own that. And I want you to recognize that you have the power to make your life magnificent. Okay? And I'm going to help you. I will be your guide, Whitman is basically saying. Okay, so here's another movie clip here for you. What better way to talk about anything than Yoda and Star Wars, right? Okay, do you recognize this clip here? That's Luke, of course, and this is Yoda. This is when they're meeting for the first time. And I'll just show you this clip, and when I do, I just want you to consider if Yoda might be taking on a relationship with Luke that's somehow similar to the relationship that Walt Whitman is taking on with us as a reader. Okay, ready? Watch this.
Let's see now. There. Now all I gotta do is find this Yoda. If he even exists. It's really a strange place to find a Jedi Master. This place gives me the creeps. Still, there's something familiar about this place. I don't know. I feel like we're being watched.
Away, put your weapon. I mean you no harm. I am wondering, why are you here?
I'm looking for someone.
Looking? Found someone you have, I would say.
Right.
Help do I get? Yes?
I don't think so. I'm looking for a great warrior.
Oh! Great warrior. Oh. Wars not make one great.
Put that down. Now we... Hey! It's my dinner!
How you get so big to do food of this kind?
Listen, Fran, we didn't mean to land in that puddle, and if we could get our ship out, we would, but we can't, so why don't you just...
Get your ship out.
Hey, get out of there!
slimy. My home, this is. But...
R2, let him have it.
Mine!
R2! Move along, little fella. We got a lot of work to do.
No. Stay and help you, I will. Are you friend?
I'm not looking for a friend. I'm looking for a Jedi Master.
Jedi Master Yoda. You seek Yoda.
You know him?
Take it to him, I will. Yes, but now, let's eat. Come. Good food, huh?
R2? Stay and watch after the camp.
Okay, so there you go. So there you have it. I think the argument that I'm trying to make, let me pull my PowerPoint back up here again. The argument I'm trying to make here is that Yoda is to Luke Skywalker what Walt Whitman is to you and me. Okay? So, yeah, that Walt Whitman is simply trying to be a guide for us somehow. And in order for us to be willing to accept the teaching, accept the guidance of Walt Whitman, he's going to have to step into our lives, shake us up a little bit, unsettle us, the way Yoda does. He doesn't come in and say, "Hi, I'm Yoda." He shows up in Luke's life, and Luke is this young guy. He's not a Jedi Master or anything like that yet. Yoda has to shake him up a little bit, mess with him, joke with him, freak him out a little bit. And then he's going to be willing and able to accept Yoda's guidance. Okay, it's a little like that with Walt Whitman. It's kind of like there was a really great movie that came out about 10 years ago called Crash. Won the Academy Award for Best Picture. If you haven't seen it, watch it. Pull it up on Netflix. This is good quarantine. It's good quarantine stuff to be watching. And so basically what it's about is that people couldn't care less about each other until literally their lives crash into one another. Then they realize how much they need each other. They realize how human they are. They're able to embrace their own humanity and those of others around them. And some miraculous transformations end up happening. So, okay. All right, so Walt Whitman then, after taking us to the heights of heaven, the depths of hell, he's unsettling us, he's opening us to the wonder of creation, right? And freaking us out a little at the same time, okay? And so then this is what he says. This is over on stanza 8. And this is how we know that Whitman really does, whether or not you feel taught by Whitman, that's completely 100% entirely your own business. But from this passage, we can tell that this is what Whitman is intending. This is what he's hoping to do with us. He's hoping to be our teacher. And you see this on stanza 8 over on page 1367. So, yes, again, after taking us to the heights of heaven, depths of hell, then he says, "We understand then, do we not? What I promised without mentioning, have you not accepted? What the study could not teach, what the preaching could not accomplish, is accomplished now, is it not?" Even sounds like Yoda there, doesn't he? Right? Accomplished it is. Right? So, yeah, he's quite confident that through his poem, Crossing Brooklyn Ferry, he has transformed us, all of us, in ways that ordinary teaching, ordinary preaching cannot accomplish. This is incredibly bold, folks. You know, this is incredibly presumptuous. Whitman was not short on confidence at all. And even after reading those obituaries, because he knew about them when people were saying such hateful things, he kept right on going. It didn't faze him. He kept right on writing the poetry that he did. That's confidence. Okay. Okay. So finally, here's the ending now. This is stanza 9 on 1367. So after the teaching is done, now he has the final sort of closing aria, and that's an opera term. Whitman loved opera. So you can picture Whitman, I don't know that he was a singer himself, but he loved others singing. And you can imagine this being an aria from a great tenor just blasting this out. These lines of praise now, right? Flow on, river, flow with the flood tide and ebb with the ebb tide. Frolic on, crested and scallop-edged waves, gorgeous clouds of the sunset, drench with your splendor me, or the men and women generations after me. Cross from shore to shore, countless crowds of passengers. Stand up, tall masts of Mannahatta. Stand up, beautiful hills of Brooklyn. Okay, and then it finally ends over on 1368. Again, talking to all of us, those on the ferry, those of us years later reading his poetry. We fathom you not, we love you. So again, if no one told you today they loved you, Walt Whitman just did. We love you. There is perfection in you also. You furnish your parts towards eternity. Great or small, you furnish your parts toward the soul. So yeah, it kind of gets you right here. And it's meant to make us feel warm and fuzzy, but also determined to go on and do something substantial out there with our lives and to bust out of this sense of living these lives of quiet desperation, even here in the midst of the pandemic plague. Whitman would say there are incredible opportunities even under these circumstances to make a real contribution to humanity. So think about what that might be for you, what your contribution even in the midst of this pandemic can be. Okay, so the question then is, people hated him so much in his own lifetime, or at least a good portion of his lifetime. How did he finally break out of that? Well, what happened was that, Okay, well, let me just read this is from an influential Victorian critic by the name of E.C. Stedman in 1880. And this is what he said about Walt Whitman and his influence. And 1880, that's roughly when Whitman's reputation was starting to turn around. 1871, that's when that false obituary came out with all that hatred. 1880, that was some years later, Whitman's reputation started to turn around. And this is what E.C. Stedman says. Others are more widely read, but who else has been so widely talked of? And who has held even a few readers with so absolute a sway? Whatever we may think of his chantings, the time has gone by when it was possible to ignore him. Whatever his ground may be, he has set his feet squarely and audaciously upon it. It is no light weight. Endeavor then to judge him on his merits, for he will and must be judged. Okay, so Like him, hate him, whatever. But you can no longer ignore him. Walt Whitman is not going anywhere. And that turned out to be absolutely the case. I mean, here we are 140 years later, and Whitman's poetry is just absolutely central to what we call the American literary canon. He went on to influence important writers of the Harlem Renaissance like Langston Hughes, writers of modernism like Ezra Pound, and he went on to influence people like of the Beat generation, the Beatniks, Allen Ginsberg, and talked about Walt Whitman. Made some mention to Whitman being understood to be the great American poet somehow. Well, writers in other countries were looking at Whitman when other countries were working to build up a sense of national identity. So, writers like Jose Marti in Cuba and Gabriel Garcia Lorca, people like that, would take to Whitman's poetry and take this incredible expansive vision of what it is to be an American and work to apply that to their own national identities. So he wasn't influential just in the American scene, but globally also. Incredibly important poet. So if you remember nothing else about his poetry, remember that. Incredibly influential individual. So I'll just end with this one last video clip here. One way that we know that Walt Whitman remains firmly entrenched in the popular imagination. Walt Whitman had an important role in that series, Breaking Bad. That was kind of a big deal a few years back. I don't know if any of y'all were into that, Breaking Bad, but the main character, his name was Walter White. And yes, Walter White, Walt Whitman. That was deliberate. So the makers of Breaking Bad were trying to say that Walter White of Breaking Bad is a modern day Walt Whitman. And yeah, it's not an exactly rosy view of American national identity. If the American vision of hope and opportunity and camaraderie that Walt Whitman is trumpeting about in his poetry, that's Walt Whitman. But Walter White in Breaking Bad, I mean, man, what's he trumpeting? Life is quiet desperation, and my only way out is to cook meth and turn into a murderer, right? So yeah. They're turning Walt Whitman on his head, basically. So let's just look at a clip from this. This is from Breaking Bad. And this is where one of the main characters is reading to Walter White one of Walt Whitman's poems. And it's actually one of the ones I assigned you to read when I heard The Learned Astronomer. So let's take a quick look at this. And I might be getting a little glare from the light. So let me turn that off. Okay, we'll turn off the glare. And then let's watch this clip here, okay, from Breaking Bad.
And all the while, I kept thinking about that great old Whitman poem. When I heard The Learned Astronomer.
I don't know it.
Well, anyway.
Well, can you recite it?
Pathetically enough, I could.
All right, well.
Oh.
No, come on. Come on.
When I heard The Learned Astronomer, when the proofs, the figures were ranged in columns before me, when I was shown the charts and the diagrams to add, divide, and measure them, when sitting, heard the astronomer where he lectured, with much applause in the lecture room. How soon, unaccountable, I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out, I wandered off by myself in the mystical, moist night air, and from time to time looked up in perfect silence at the stars. Yes, I am a nerd. Bravo. Thank you.
Okay, folks, well, there you go. That's the end of the lecture. And also, as it happens, okay, let me, excuse me a second. Let me turn this off. Yeah, we got a commercial there. Okay, well, there we have it. That's the end of the lecture, and it's also the end of the semester. So I'm sorry I have to tell you over video that it's the end of the semester. I'm sincerely glad that I had the opportunity to work with you all and got to know you in class and out of class. And I hope it's been a good semester for you. I'm sorry for the disruptions. And if there's anything that I can do for you, if you want to talk about any sort of career ideas, or you like some career, a sounding board to talk about career ideas, or you're interested in talking about possible majors you'd like to pursue, anything I can do for you, please reach out. I know I gave you my phone number. You're welcome to use it. I will be around over the summer and next year. So let me hear from you, okay? Okay, well, have yourselves a good summer, and please stay safe out there, okay? All right, bye-bye now.